Very much. Thank you. So this is kind of one of those things of like, be careful what you wish for, because we're doing some filming around here. You may have seen us. We're doing some filming, and I noticed there was a slot at the end of the day, and I said to Anna, if this was Tuesday night, I'd just come in from playing paddle, and she said, yes, you can do it, but you've got to have the slides by 11 o'clock Wednesday morning. So it's like, okay, right, I'm going to do that. So I want to talk a little bit about business creativity and lessons in business creativity from a rock icon, from David Bowie, not me. Tell you a little bit about myself. It's kind of fairly kind of varied career. I think probably discovering that I'm kind of neurodiverse in my 50s kind of tells me quite a lot about my different kind of paths. So I was in, after uni, I was in head of sponsorship for LBC Radio. Then I set up a marketing business. Then I went into the fashion business. And then I ended up being a lecturer at NTU for 10 years. And then pretty much decided that I wanted to get back out on my own, be my own boss. And so in the last few years, or kind of last year and a half, I've kind of basically left and kind of formed a number of different ventures with a number of different people. So if you know Bodega in Cobden Chambers, we have an event space there called Side Door Studio. We have TBC, which is an agency which I'm working with Albert and Alfie, and it's basically a kind of creative collective where we have particularly young creatives kind of working as a full service agency. And then we have FSC, so Future Skills Club. And the idea behind that is like it's an educational platform, but kind of built from the ground up. So the idea is you basically change your life for the price of a pizza. You can do courses in creativity or collaboration or how to be more commercially savvy and stuff like that. And actually today we just found out that we've got a grant from Innovate UK. So I'm saying that publicly so they can't take it away again. We just found out we got one of the Creative Catalyst grants, so we're going to be doing lots of free workshops and filming and activities over the next few months. So hopefully you'll kind of hear about us. And then one of the other ways I kind of do things is I teach business creativity. So creativity is such a fundamental thing, and when we look at what we've seen today, and we've seen so many conversations about AI and about technology and about machine learning, but one of the central themes I think that has come out of today is how creativity is fundamental to all that we're doing, that we're talking about human-centric marketing. And creativity is something that is fundamental to who we are as humans, but we don't necessarily learn that much about it. It's the number one future skill according to the World Economic Forum. It's the number one skill in 10 million LinkedIn job adverts. But we don't necessarily learn how to do it, and yet people really want to. People feel scared, maybe they're born creative, and then it's almost kind of schooled out of them. So what we're trying to do with talking about creativity in business is understand how we can kind of almost demystify the creative process. We can make it simpler and more fun and more enjoyable. And in fact, the first course that we're going to be launching with Future Skills Club is called How to Be More Creative. So this is a bit of a distillation of that. And what we've done is we've thought about the creative process. And the reality is when we're born and we're kids, we are naturally creative. We play, we explore, we go and muck about, we experiment, we fail, we try things, we work with other people. But then for whatever reason, throughout our schooling and throughout education and throughout kind of society and institutional kind of norms, we kind of lose that creativity. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to break it back down into some key habits that we can basically all kind of use and we can do every day, and they'll just help us be more creative. But I guess one of the key questions is, why does creativity matter to business? And the reality is that business is about complex problem solving. It's about critical thinking. It's about collaborating. It's about communicating. It's about connecting with other people. And that's what creativity is about. If we can develop our creativity within our organizations, then we can start to solve some of the problems that we face as a world. We can be starting to think about innovation and idea and moving things forward. So what we did was we broke down the creative process into 4 key habits. And I guess the idea of what we're saying is, if we just automatically do these habits and we automatically start to kind of make them part of our process, building our ideas from people like BJ Fogg and James Clear with Atomic Habits, if we just start to do them, then we will automatically become more creative. So we broke them down into stealing, which you might, if you want to be more polite, say is borrowing, exploring, connecting, and playing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those. But one of the people that I think exemplifies this so well, and somebody who was just this amazing creative, but also kind of like practiced these habits throughout his life, from his kind of, the early Ziggy days right through to his untimely death, was Bowie. Bowie was a visionary, not just in terms of music. I mean, he kept on reinventing himself. He'd have something like Ziggy Stardust, and then he'd decide to kill it off. But also he, predicted social media. He launched his own ISP. He was the first major star to do, to be streaming music. He was constantly at the edge. He was constantly this kind of exploring and looking for ideas and finding places that he could kind of like find inspiration and insights, and then he could remix them and make them into something new. So Bowie really is just a fantastic way of kind of, I guess, pulling apart those 4 habits that we're talking about. And the first one I want to talk about is stealing. And I'm not talking about stealing as in nicking and taking something that doesn't belong to you. I'm talking about the idea of finding something and then moving it forward. Combining things and pushing them together, making new things out of old things. And that's what Bowie did all the time. If you look at that Ziggy Stardust tour, it took inspiration from Kabuki Theatre, it took inspiration from Clockwork Orange. His tour manager basically said he just picks things and finds them and then puts them together and they come out being him. So essentially he created things that were original from things that weren't necessarily original. And this is an example, I guess, of like a great, cultural example of something being stolen. One of the activities we do at Future Skills Club is we say, go make an album. Look, go make an album cover. Here's the Presley cover. Here's the Clash cover. You can see clearly that they're very much kind of like one's taken from the other. But they've been remixed and they've been brought together and they've been made into something new. And it's that idea, I think, that quite often, we need to be able to say to people, and particularly young people, don't be scared of creativity. Go out and look for really interesting things and then mash them up with other interesting things, remix them as you might do in music, or you might do in cooking, or you might do in anything else, and then come up with something new and something original. So stealing really is a fundamental part of being creative. I've had a few people come to me and say, stealing is a really strong word, what about borrowing? It's like, yeah, borrowing's kind of okay. Borrowing kind of implies that you're asking for permission, but stealing really is like, you see something and your brain almost subconsciously automatically goes, I could do something with that. I'm going to store it in my deep memory. At some point, that's going to become useful to me. But if we're going to go stealing, then what we need to do is we need to go exploring. And for me, this is one of the most fundamental aspects of creativity. It's about having a growth mindset. It's about being prepared to be curious, to practice critical thinking, to go broad and deep and T-shaped, that thing that so many employers say they want, to be T-shaped. You've got a real passion and a real interest in something, but you're really interested and you go across a variety of different cultures, technology, innovation, inspiration. And how can you bring kind of exploring into your life, and how can you make it part of what you do? I think one of the answers to that is essentially just be braver, be more curious, go around that corner that looks a little bit unusual, go to that show that you thought might be rubbish, read that book that you're not quite sure about. Just be opening up your mind. There's so much evidence to show that actually neuroplasticity is affected by new, fresh experiences. And so we can almost kind of change our brains and make them more curious and more exploratory just by going and doing fresh, interesting things. There was quite a lot of research that was done. There's been a lot of research into creativity, and I've read quite a lot of it. It used to be my kind of specialism when I was at NTU. And when you put people in an MRI scan, what you see is, so they did this with rappers, and they did it with jazz musicians improvising. When you put them in an MRI scan, and you see their brains, as soon as you start to see them improvising or bringing things in that are fresh or having new impetus, you see the brain light up. It acts in a different way. And almost the bit that is the part of you that actually is the routine bit, the kind of day-to-day bit, shuts down because your subconscious is taking over. So exploring is a really important part of that. Sorry, my throat's a bit dry. Another thing, and again, it's hard to teach, but it's almost one of those things that we want to be able to do, is to make connections. So this is the Hive, Wolfgang Buttress, who was speaking at a great conference I was at last week. Just the idea of making connections. This is a beautiful piece that is also connected with the ideas of bees being in their hives. It's connecting humanity, it's connecting the climate crisis, it's an experience, it's an event, it's part of the subconscious. All of these things are kind of melding together and working together. And I guess of all the habits that, I've worked with thousands of students and lots of clients, this one is the one that you almost have to say, you just got to trust. 90% of the brain's processing power is about the subconscious. So much of it is about spotting patterns, seeing trends, identifying themes, recognizing commonalities of language and image and that kind of stuff. So much of it is about connecting. And connecting really, they all work together. So if you go and look for ideas and you study ideas and you look for innovation and you explore further, then you naturally, automatically start to make more connections. You start to just kind of think that actually, oh, what if I put that with that? And what if I did this with that? I talked about stealing a little bit earlier. When you look at the innovation that's happened throughout our society and throughout technology, so much of it is been taken from one place to another place, and then someone's made a connection. So Steve Jobs famously said, good artists copy, great artists steal. Steve Jobs stole the mouse. It originally came from Stanford, then I think it came from Xerox PARC. He saw it was this giant thing, and it couldn't really be used. And he just went back to his designer and he said, I want you to make this, but I want to make it really small. I want it to be really robust, and it's got to work if you use it on your jeans. And the designer went, well, how am I going to go and do that? And then he went out and he bought a butter dish, and he bought a rollerball from a deodorant, and he started playing and putting them together. And he took it forward and he moved it forward. He made connections between things that may seem really disparate, but actually kind of really work together. Jobs also said that creativity is just connecting things. It's just making the connection between things. So I haven't done this talk before, so I'm hoping that I'm doing all right on time. Playing. So that's Alfie, laughing probably at one of my dreadful puns. So Alfie's creative director of the agency, and Albert is our sort of video director. And essentially this to me, that's Paolo in the background as well, who's clearly not that amused by my joke. Playing is fundamental to who we are, and it's what makes life fun. It's what makes life enjoyable. It's what we do when we're children. But it's also about not having boundaries, not necessarily having rules, not necessarily having restrictions, being allowed to go out and enjoy ourselves, to not be worried about failure, and to experiment. And unfortunately, and this is one of my big bugbears, and I could probably talk to you for hours, but having worked in education for so many years, education doesn't enable us to play. It takes us and it says, you have to be uniform. Often you actually have to wear a uniform. You have to be graded, you have to be processed, we have to be able to measure you. And what that means is that often you become scared of playing and experimenting. So I think playing, again, is one of those fundamental things. I have a particular bugbear about Lego, okay? I love Lego when it's a box of bricks and you can do whatever you want. When Lego is basically every single person has to make exactly the same Harry Potter, and if you do it wrong, then you've failed, that's not playing. So playing is about being able to kind of be open, having a growth mindset, getting out there and doing things that kind of allow you to experiment. I don't know if any of you have seen the TED Talk about the pasta tower, but it's this fantastic experiment that's been done all over the world, and you basically get some pasta, and you get a meatball, was it ping pong ball, and you get some elastic bands, and you get some string. And what you have to do as a team is you have to make the highest tower. And the people who always do really well are the architects and the engineers, because they understand these things. But the other people who do really, really well are the school kids who are maybe 6 or 7 or 8, because they're prepared to keep on experimenting, keep on playing, keep on doing things that are kind of really interesting. The ones who do really badly are the business school graduates. So, maybe that tells you a little bit about the kind of processes that we have as part of our kind of education system. So, playing. So I guess one of the things I want to talk about really, hopefully being on time, I haven't seen a 5-minute thing yet, about 5 minutes, is how you can begin to apply these habits in your daily life, but particularly in your business life. I think the first one really is just accepting that idea that every idea comes from another idea, that we are iterative, that we build and we grow and we move forward as a species by standing on the shoulders of giants and by moving forward and doing things that other people have done, but just doing them in a little bit of a way. I like to think about creativity as about being fresh. Rather than something being totally original, it's fresh. So I guess it's that idea, embrace the idea of studying ideas. When you go and see, if you see a great piece of design, or you see a great product, or you see a great new brand, or you see a great new piece of art, or a great new piece of TV, it's looking at it, and a fundamental part of it is pulling it apart, deconstructing it, seeing how it works, and then thinking, oh, I could take a bit of that, and I could take a bit of that. Airbnb is basically taking people's homes and then making them into hotels. You know, Uber is having a transport system, but without owning any cars. It's just this idea of like just disrupting and challenging and doing things a little bit differently. So I think that's the first thing. Curiosity is fundamental to being creative. The second thing is exploring. It makes you happy, it makes you inspired, it makes you excited. You're looking for innovation. You discover people and places and things that you might never have done. And it just opens you up to the world. It is that fundamental basis of having a growth mindset, of being prepared to kind of go out and say, I'm open to this, I'm open to possibility. The other thing is that just that simple thing that if you do these first two, the next ones will just happen. You'll start to make connections. You'll start to see things, and you'll start to go, okay, I can, you can see it in branding at the moment. You can see that these, as we move, we're in a scary time. You can see in branding so much emphasis on those human-centric things, on feeling secure, feeling stable, nostalgia, authenticity, all those kind of things, because you're seeing those patterns, and then you see them maybe in motifs or colours or language or text or font or whatever. So it's just starting to see these connections coming together. But the last one, probably most importantly in a way, is for us to just not be afraid. The creative process is who we are. It feels very natural to us. When you see kids playing and you see kids experimenting, they're not worried about being judged. They're not worried about failing or being graded or being given a specific mark. What they're doing is they're just being naturally human. They're playing and they're enjoying themselves. So I guess the thing that I'd kind of like to finish with in a way is that we're all in business. We've all been at this conference and we've learned so much about, AI and technology and the potential of, these things. But also what we've done is we've seen some really human problems. We've seen all the things that we saw with the manual house. There have been other talks that have been really moving. We're not just going to solve those problems by plugging something into a machine. We're only going to really solve them if we can use the power of our kind of inborn creativity. So if we go out there and we steal and we explore and we connect and we play, we can all naturally be more creative. Thank you very much.